The social classes of the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages in Europe began almost 1500 years ago, from about the year 500 to 1500. During this time, a system of government and society called feudalism tied people and kingdoms together. In feudal society, the nobles of the higher class protected the lower classes in exchange for service, and everyone had his or her own God-given role. Let's go over the chart together. Notice the different people, housing, and wealth represented in each bubble. We'll begin with the clergy. These are the men and women who made up the Roman Catholic Church. While women could devote their lives to God by becoming nuns in a convent, and men could become monks in a monastery, the real power in the church belonged to the church's male leaders, such as bishops and priests. The Pope, the head of the church, had more wealth than the king due to heavy taxes imposed on the people, including the monarchy. Monks were some of the few people who were literate. One of their tasks was to copy the Bible by hand. These Bibles often took years to complete. Churches and cathedrals were central to medieval life. Construction on these ornate cathedrals took generations to complete. The king was the head of the kingdom in the Middle Ages. Kings and queens lived in castles where lords and ladies of the nobility served them. Kings granted lands to nobles in exchange for their loyalty and defense of the kingdom. The Pope and the monarchy were often at odds with one another over who held more power over the people. Next, let's look at the lords and ladies who made up the nobility or the upper class. The nobility headed the castles, which were heavily fortified to defend against possible enemies. A lord collected taxes from the people who lived in and around his castle. In exchange for service, the lord offered protection. Knights were another type of vassal, or someone who entered into a relationship with his lord for protection. Knights swore allegiance to the lord of the castle. A knight defended the castle from enemies and followed a code of chivalry, or a set of honorable virtues such as loyalty, obedience, and the protection of the defenseless. The lowest class of society were the peasants. Peasants lived in and around the castle, working the fields for the master of the castle, who protected them. They had little wealth and depended upon the lord for their livelihood. Merchants and skilled tradesmen made up the growing class of people committed to buying and selling services and goods. They sought to grow wealthy and to keep the money they earned. For this reason, while they still played an important role in the Middle Ages, they had an uneasy relationship to feudal society, which had strict rules for who should possess wealth and power and who should not.